there we go. So today I'm going to show the Cassandra keyboard layout, or is it Andromeda temperament, on a conventional keyboard. So we see the keyboard. We are assisted today with George, who will be controlling the Fat Boy and the heads-up display. There we go. So the Cassava keyboard, or schematic fourth keyboard, is based on a very simple observation, which is that if you play the black keys, the pattern of large and small steps on the keyboard matches the large and small semitones you get to make up a Pythagorean or Pythagorean-like chromatic scale. So the place I usually start is here to be C. I'm not sure if this is C exactly. It might be, because I don't have absolute pitch, but at least this is C, C sharp, D. Well, it looks like F actually on this keyboard. Should we call it F? When it, of course, was what I see here. So F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F. And that is an octave. So in practice, what this means is that where you see an octave on the keyboard, what you actually get is a perfect fourth. And so the pattern of notes here repeats every perfect fourth instead of every octave. And that is just a coincidence that this happens to work. It was something I noticed over 20 years ago, I think, that you could get a pattern of notes matching reality. Nobody else, as far as I know, has noticed it in all this time, but it is a fairly important observation, because a lot of people say that the conventional keyboard here, the Halberstadt layout, is based around certain scales, diatonic scales, and giving you a full chromatic set that is biased to certain musical ideas, and that it won't work if you add more notes. But actually it does work perfectly if you move it to a slightly sharpened fourth, either a Pythagorean fourth or a fourth that's a fifth that's slightly sharper, a fourth that's slightly flatter than in 12-tone equal temperament. So the Pythagorean scale that I use here doesn't start at the bottom and work to the top. That's not one end of it, that's the middle of it. The reason for that is that we get a schismatic equivalence here, which is close to the ideal ratio of a perfect third, a major third. And that's a coincidence which we call schismatic temperament. It means that the interval of the schisma, as called by Alexander Ellis or whoever, 2 cents differentiates that from a major third, if we were in Pythagorean intonation, which we're not. So we'll have to be a bit worse than that. Yes. So the black notes count up to 12. And so these are like the notes that you would get on a normal keyboard, and set so that you get a nice major third here, major triad there, which is F here, would be C if we go down here. If you want to pick out a diatonic scale, of course, so there are a few different scales came in there, but it's easy to find a diatonic scale. One issue is that of course, because this is not a mean tone, there are 2 different values for the second of the scale. So if we do, is it? That's good, isn't it? E, G, B. Is that? Yeah, I think that one's a better there. At least sometime you'll need a different version of that. You get those. So when you find a black key on the keyboard, the way the keyboard is arranged, there's usually an obvious, yeah, you found a black key, have you, George? That's good, George. So I'm looking at what is a G key here, but would be F sharp normally. That's right, George. So this is G sharp. It could also be, no, it's F sharp. It's an F sharp key playing G. It's an F sharp. It could also be a G flat. But if you look at the key, it's not perfect from there. It's much closer to G than F than it is to G. So that interval there is a comma. This interval here is something else. That's it. Yes, George. So that makes it easy to navigate the keyboard. It is a perfect layout. So whenever you see two black keys separated by one white key in the middle, this is the interval of a limmer, isn't it, George? Mm-hmm. That's it. It's a limmer. Whenever you see two black keys separated by two white keys, that's an apotome. You add the two together, that is a major third approximating 9/8 with a Pythagorean tuning. It's exactly 9/8. Whenever you see a pattern like this, and on the black keys, it's going to be F sharp to B flat. That is a major second approximating 10/9. Add the two together, major third. Go down by something that's not a comma, minor third. So. And this is an anomalous. I think that might be that's probably a 7/6, but at least if it looks right on the keyboard, it will be right in sound. It's exactly the same as using mean tone with a conventional 12-note keyboard, and somewhere the chain of fifths has to break, and the anomalous note is this D here. We don't know if D belongs to C sharp or E flat. Yes, you can speak, George, but that's right. If you don't distract the thing. Yeah, so D, we don't know which way it is. I think it's that flat, not that sharp. And the way I can check is I should have the pitch bend mapped to be equal to a comma. So if I go that down, that seems to be the same, doesn't it, George? I turn this up. It's not the same. So D is in this case C sharp down or F sharp down by a comma. That's it. And so this makes for a good melodic keyboard. It gives you, and we have like 2 octaves arranged here, haven't we? G to G up here. So obviously 2 octaves is a lot less than you would get on a normal keyboard. It works out there are 29 steps to the octave on the keyboard. We didn't choose the number 29, we chose number 12 for the perfect fourth, but it adds up to 29. You can, if you like, tune it to a scale that repeats every 29 steps. This is tuned to repeat every 12 steps. So it's essentially a non-octave tuning, but it has lots of octaves. So that's not really a helpful way of talking about it. No, it wasn't very good, wasn't it? So yeah, it works fine for melody or for a drone. That's good, isn't it? That will be a perfect fifth, won't it? A perfect fifth looks like whatever that is. That's it. And it's simple to think about, but it may be useful to have charts. So I've got charts here that came from my website. So can we put that on the heads-up display, please, George? So we've got sophisticated technology here. That is my page on the website. That is the one we looked up, isn't it, George? It's the correct thing. So if you go there, you can get all these charts for how to do chords. Okay, you can take it off the heads-up display now, George. That's it. Thank you, George. So one thing we have is a tritone substitution. So if we pretend that this is C, because it's the way I think about it. So what does it say? You take your finger out the way, George, where it says D flat here, D flat there. So take your finger out of the way, E, C sharp, A, E flat. So I'll think E, C sharp, A, E flat. So that is the tritone substitution of the dominant of the chord, and it's tuned to an approximate 4, 5, 6, 7. And if I resolve onto the tonic, isn't that good? Did you like that, George? You like that? So, yeah, so I've talked about, George, now come on, George. So I have talked about this in other places. The tritone substitution is a classic thing. Some people think it requires equal temperament. In fact, it turned out a lot better in the 225, 224 family of temperament classes. And the particular temperament class here is Andromeda. Andromeda is an extension of Garibaldi. Garibaldi is the schismatic temperament that tempers out the 225, 224. And Andromeda also has some 11 limit intervals, and that will be here. This is a complete 11 limit chord. So let's try, George. We start with C sharp. We do F sharp. We do B flat. So I'm talking about the keys here, not the sounds. The key is B flat. The next key is D. The next key is F sharp. The next key is C. Yeah, that's it, George. It's 11 limit harmony, George. Do we like 11 limit harmony? That's good. And there are more that are on the website. So the Andromeda temperament gives you approximate 13 limit harmony across the keyboard. The 29 notes you get to the octave here match the 29 as I've already showed on the Lumitone. So any chord that you could play on that big impressive keyboard you can play here, but it is harder to find them on this keyboard, just because although the layout does make sense, it's not as easy as a generalized keyboard layout, but there is still a lot of scope for harmony here, although it takes up time to learn it. So you can use it for melody. Yes, George. With melody, obviously there's a big span here. You really need two hands to share out your melody. And this is a thing, I've been playing this for a long time, haven't I, George? That's it. Yes. Longer than you've been around. A lot longer, in fact, isn't it, George? Yeah. And you can certainly learn to play tunes. The good thing about it is you don't need to worry about the pitch bend wheel, or the pitch bend is set to be useful. If you want to change the intonation a bit. If you only play the black keys, you get reasonably normal melody, because it's something you could do in a normal keyboard. If you mix the black and white keys, you get more interesting things. Now, specifically as a near Pythagorean scale, there are lots of precedents for this across Eurasia. Basically, there are Middle Eastern tunings, particularly Safiuddin, do we call him, who made a 17-note Pythagorean scale. There are 17 white notes to the octave, but because I choose to center it on the 12 black notes, those 17 notes aren't the right. No, stop doing that, George. Your 17 notes don't match what Safiuddin did, but you can certainly find the 17 notes here because you have all 29 notes, and it'll be something like that will get you the 17-note scale. The Lulu Jinshu from China goes to at least 20, or no, was it 18? I think at least 18 steps in the Pythagorean scale are counted out there. We know that European medieval music would use the Pythagorean scale, and the Shruti scale from India, by some reckonings, is either a schismatic temperament or a Pythagorean scale up to 22 steps. So all of these framework tunings are here in the keyboard there. And there's plenty of melody, and you can use this keyboard to explore Pythagorean tuning if you set it to Pythagorean, and you can learn about the fact that that these two semitones are different sizes, or even that. Let's see it, Giorgio. And you can also experiment with your 13-limit harmony if you know the right places to find it. And you really need to go through the charts for that. And sometime I might display them a bit better. But at least this is the keyboard. And now, unlike the Lumatone things I've been showing in other videos, you don't need specialist equipment for this. You get your keyboard. This keyboard is not producing the sound. A lot of hardware keyboards, or most hardware keyboards, do not support full-scale retuning, and you need that here. This keyboard will actually do a 12-note octave retuning, but that's no good because that's not an octave, that's a fourth. So it's going into the computer, and we're using Zen sub-effects for that. So what else do we want to say about it, George? We've talked about Safiuddin, haven't we? Do you want to play with your fat boy then? Because you like your fat boy, don't you? Come on then. So do you think that's that then, George? Anything else we've got to say? That's it. Show them the fat boy. That's it. The fat boy are not sponsoring this video in any way. I don't know if you can even still buy those, at least new. I expect you can find them second hand. Right. So that's it. So thank you for watching. Then I think you can probably stop that video now, George. Here we are.